One of the things I was going to ask you about was actually the negatives of avoiding conflict. And this is kind of what we're talking about now. So what are some of the disadvantages to not doing that?
Well, how long do you want? I mean, basically, if you don't address it either emotionally in your own work and just because you can't always address it, hurt. It's not appropriate in a workplace to be telling the boss, you hurt me. That's just not, or the CEO or something. You can't do that. Or a client, you can't do that. So you have to work at it in your own level. But if you're in an office and you come across that person all the time, I think it is possible to come forward and say that, because if you don't, you will become resentful and perhaps spiteful and passive aggressive. And I think that if you avoid conflict, I actually have a client, and he's very avoidant of conflict. And basically it means that he has a colleague who is quite narky, quite difficult, I would actually say he has a narcissistic personality, so very complicated character. And it has this really bad effect further down the line with his other colleagues. So one of his senior managers gets really demotivated really quickly. And his work gets sloppy and he gets really frustrated. And I'm just like, you're going to have to deal with this, or that guy is going to go, and you're going to have to bite the bullet on doing that and get 360s. It depends on where you sit in an organization as well and your sense of power within that organization. But if you're the CEO, you've got to deal with that because, otherwise you're just basically letting, I don't know, probably not allowed to swear, but you're just letting stuff ricochet everywhere because you're kind of cowardly at some level. That's my take on it. I mean, I'm quite stark about it, but if you have a problem, raise it. I did have a colleague who was very passive aggressive with me. She was, and I did find that very hard to deal with, because she was never overt with me, and that's what was really difficult. So I could never speak to her, and yet she was actually bitching about me around the office to senior managers and all sorts. And she did not recognize that is bullying in the workplace. So if that's what you're doing, then you are bullying. I just want to put it out there. I think in England, sometimes there can be this thing where if you don't say anything, then you can't cause offense. But actually excluding information from people, withdrawing from contact is actually a form of bullying. So I think you have to, that is a problem if you are not engaging. So I hope I have answered the question. You have to bite the bullet, I know it's a conflict averse community, but gee, there were some terrible people in that office who were extremely aggressive and got away with it. And that was horrible for the rest of us. It just created this awful toxic culture.